DHS is warning of a domestic terror on U.S. soil in reaction to Trump's strike on Iran. Breanna Morello will help us determine the difference between national security and deep state surveillance.
Wish we didn't have such a toxic relationship with the government, but we do.
The Iranian conflict is exposing the fault lines in MAGA. Our own Chris Bedford will give us his playbook to keep America first together.
There's one thing I learned this weekend. It's that everyone I know is a foreign policy expert, particularly on Iran, as it turns out.
And it's been over 1,000 days since FBI whistleblower Garret O'Boyle was suspended without pay. We'll have your best guesses on why Kash Patel isn't correcting the Bureau's past mistake.
There's two minds on this one. One is the deep state, and the other is trust the plan.
Blaze News, The Mandate starts right now. Good evening, Patriots. I'm Jill Savage, joined as always by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
I feel like we're going to do it live tonight with no lines, just live.
Just keep going. That's what we're doing right now with our foreign policy as well. So Iran, we know they haven't launched a retaliatory strike on the American homeland since Trump decimated their nuclear facilities. But we know that White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt warned that the enemy may be lying in wait thanks to Joe Biden.
The previous administration allowed 20 million illegal aliens into our country. This administration is focused on the largest mass deportation of those illegal criminals, many of them who do come from countries in the Middle East. Many of those were known terrorists, and this administration is detaining and deporting them every day to protect our homeland and protect the American public.
Additionally, DHS has issued a national terrorism advisory bulletin of a possible retaliatory attack on U.S. soil. So here to break this down for us is Breanna Morello. She's the host of the Breanna Morello Show. So thanks so much for coming in today. So we look at this, and obviously this is the headlines that have been dominating all weekend, but we know that you have some pretty good sources, right? You break a lot of stories. So I want to ask you, is this DHS, is this an issue of good faith for their warning out on this, or is this a replay of what we've seen for the war on terror, the Patriot Act, et cetera?
Yeah. So as many of your audience members probably already know, the Biden regime allowed thousands of illegal aliens to just flood into our country from countries that hate us. And so the reality of it is yes, there is a threat there. And I've spoken to my sources who have, they've followed the terrorism threat throughout the FBI through their entire career. They've led divisions and they've led teams to dig into all of this. They have told me that a lot of these sleeper cell stories are badly sourced internally. So when they're telling us that there's a threat, that the sources are not very trustworthy is how he kind of phrased it. He does believe that there's a potential, obviously, of an Islamic terrorist attack, but he says there's a difference between that and whether they're a sleeper cell, which means that they've been trained by the government to come into our country and cause mass destruction. So that's something that he says that we should look out for. Now, I tend to disagree with that. I mean, I remember this video that was circulating online when an independent journalist confronted these group of Middle Eastern looking individuals, and the male came forward and said, "You're going to remember me." I think that shocked a lot of people on X, and we're still to this day wondering where that individual is because he sounded like that was a threat. So I think there's a lot to be nervous about. I think that there is potential for there to be a terrorist attack here on U.S. soil. When you let in that many unvetted individuals, you never know what you're going to get.
So this is something that really post 9/11 has astounded me, which is that if the threat was as great as we were told, and certainly I was expecting, it's astounding that we haven't had, right, the amount of terrorism that was predicted, in the last 20, 25 years. Because if you were around at that time, everyone thought this was the new wave. This was what the entire world was now going to face, right? Was terrorism in the U.S. And if you really wanted to do it, where there's a will, there's a way. How hard would it be to sneak in the United States of America, even before Biden was letting people in, right? Mm-hmm. There's Canada, the border there. So there's two lines of thought over the last couple of decades about this. One is, look, the reason that there isn't any terrorists is because we stopped them. And we were very successful at preventing it, throughout the world. And the other is maybe this threat wasn't as great as we thought, right? So I kind of think of that when I think of this issue now, where everyone's talking about sleeper cells, everyone's talking about potential retaliation. I mean, what is your sense of that? Because I think everyone would admit that what you just said is true. There could be sleeper cells all over this damn country because the Biden administration let all these people in. Yeah. On the other hand, is there the will and the organization? I guess that's sort of the question that I have.
Yeah, interesting enough, I don't think most Americans know, but the majority of those who came into our country and who were on terror watch lists actually wasn't from the southern border. In 2023, they came from the northern border. They came from Canada. And I think that's also something that we should be driving home at this point as well, because that's very critical. Now, the sleeper cell story, everyone keeps telling me that it's overplayed. And my source, retired FBI agent, was the one who was telling me that keep in mind that the FBI is saying that they're going to monitor individuals. Well, they're going to probably use this as an excuse to surveil the rest of us as well, because that's what they've done time and time again. So while we sit here and we watch them go back and forth and tell us that there is this threat here, why aren't we having ICE go pick up these people? Why isn't DHS getting involved? Because when the FBI is telling you that they're just going to monitor these individuals, that usually means it's some type of surveillance scheme.
Well, that's so concerning because we see with like our FBI whistleblower friends and stuff, and they, like Steve Friend goes out there online and he posts things of the FBI and, the FBI is going to take credit for this or that, when it was like local law enforcement that would go out and do this. And we all hope and pray that things are changing there at the FBI. But when you look at it, on the face of this, when we know that this level of threat is out there, and what they're doing is they're saying, we're going to watch this, right? And we've seen event after event take place on the U.S. homeland and, the Trump assassination attempts and whatnot. Well, oftentimes they say, we knew about these guys ahead of time. That's the problem. When you're only going to say we're going to surveil people when there are real threats that are facing the American citizens.
Yeah, the catch line is they were on our radar after every terror attack in this country, whether it's a mass shooting, for a domestic shooter who comes and is looking to cause destruction, or a foreigner. They always say that they were on the radar. So again, the FBI just looking for any excuse to surveil Americans, which they always do. And unfortunately, I don't think there's enough motive involved in here when it comes to getting the FBI to be more aggressive in crushing these things before they actually take place. Because unfortunately, even though there's new leadership within the FBI, I'd have to say that there still is that desire to capture more power over the American people, take away and chip away at our freedoms, our privacy laws and everything. So a terror attack, although it's devastating, I don't want to say the FBI is aligned with it at all. They're not really doing much to prevent one at this point. And I know that that's going to be very controversial given the fact that we have new leadership in charge, but I haven't seen anything change.
So speaking of surveillance, let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard and the watch list. I mean, there's a couple of things to say here. I'm curious your thoughts about Tulsi within the administration. Mm-hmm. You could see the back and forth between people saying, she's out, and then the pictures of her in the room, right, that just came out yesterday, I believe. They were a little delayed, I think, pictures of Tulsi. But there's clearly a war going on within the administration over foreign policy. She's on one side of it, so we have that going on. But that's not what we're going to talk about first. Tulsi was on this TSA watch list, and he wrote a piece recently claiming that hundreds of Americans were unknowingly added to that list. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so hundreds, probably thousands of Americans were added to that list. I actually am suing TSA right now for the documents regarding the list. Unfortunately, they don't want to cough those up, of course. I was the one who called Tulsi Gabbard's team to let them know that she was added to a terror watch list as well. She kind of had an idea, but she didn't have the confirmation. I had the evidence that she needed. We're talking about the quiet skies list. Now, for those of you at home, if you ever had to go through additional security, if you have your boarding pass and I had 4 S's in the corner, whether it was the lower corner or the upper corner, that means you were on the list. Now, how did TSA do this? Well, according to my whistleblower, they were able to hire a private company to go out there to surveil your social media posts, and then they'd forward over to TSA. Now, TSA is obviously not an investigative agency, so they don't have the authority to go out there and dig into your background, but they were able to use this private company to go about doing just that. So it's deeply concerning, and I think Tulsi Gabbard getting into the administration is the reason why that's now been shut down. It cost American taxpayers $200 million a year to keep up. It started under Barack Obama. It's been going on for over a decade right now, and nobody wanted to shut it down. It was obviously unsuccessful because they've caught 0 terrorists as a result of all of this, which is obviously disgraceful. But again, Tulsi Gabbard played a major role in getting that shut down, and obviously President Trump as well.
I love that you're suing TSA. I wish that I could go out and sue TSA. I need something for them to do that. Now, if you've flown recently, you know that there's actually something new that they're doing with TSA, which they're putting the ID straight into the machine and they're doing facial recognition. But Breanna has like a helpful hint for people at home, because she was going out there on X and saying, absolutely not, I am not going to do this, probably because she's suing TSA and says, I don't want to participate in anything that you're doing. Tell people what they can do.
Yeah, you could reject it. So many people sit there and they just comply because they think it will be easier. The reality is it takes a couple of extra seconds just to preserve your privacy. So even if you've done it in the past, stop doing it now. When you go up to TSA or even customs, if you're an American citizen, you do not have to comply. That is for foreigners. That is not for American citizens. Don't hand them your driver's license. Don't put it in that little slot. Sit there and say, I want to decline the biometrics photo. If they tell you that you can't, tell them you know that they're lying, because they are. I could promise you that. So many times they've lied to me, told me that I can't decline it. You can decline it. I'm also suing TSA over that as well, because TSA hasn't gone about upholding, doing audits, doing anything like that. So we don't know who's getting those images. But what I can tell you is that DHS and TSA have both admitted to me, which they probably shouldn't have, that even though they claim that they delete those images, that TSA forwards it to DHS and then TSA deletes it. So little do you know that DHS is probably creating a database, although they say it's limited to me. They won't give me an exact number, so it could possibly be millions, thousands. We don't know, but DHS shouldn't be storing your biometrics at all.
I mean, the fact that we got used to that is one of the most insane things to me. If you had told someone, however many years it was before the naked machine, which doesn't even work, right? They found that out pretty quick afterwards, that people would allow this. No one would have believed it. And yet here we are. So anyway, we have to put that aside. We have to talk about something that's really important, that's been all over, all over the news, all over the X, and that is the FBI whistleblowers. This is a tough one, because on the one hand we have Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, just to lay this out, right, in power. They're owed some time to figure things out and to move the FBI in a different direction. And on the other hand, we have these whistleblowers who everyone at this table knows to some extent and has worked with some extent, and all of us have great respect for. And just for the audience, these are people who really did suffer career-wise for blowing the whistle at the craziness at the FBI over the last few years. So you've been a real vocal advocate, I think, for justice for them. What does that look like? What should happen?
Yeah, well, we're hoping that the FBI, if they're not going to reinstate either of them, which unfortunately Ed Martin came on my show, who's President Trump's pardon attorney, and he's running the weaponization division over at the DOJ. And he did say that they were going to come back to some capabilities, whether it's either at the FBI or within the DOJ. We didn't know at the time, but that's suddenly been shut down. So we're hoping that if they're going to shut it down at this point, Garret O'Boyle's owed money for 1,000 days. That's actually 1,001 day. He has been suspended from the Bureau. So he's still an employee. He's not being paid. We need him to reinstate his pay. If they want to investigate him for whatever reasons possible, that's fine, but at least pay the guy. He has children. Obviously, the FBI moved him to a new field office right before they did this to him. So they need to be compensated for their time. It's unrealistic for anyone at home to have a job and then to suddenly get pushed aside and told that you're going to be still employed. You're just not going to get paid to be employed. And then to expect these people to be able to keep up with that, it's just impossible. So we're hoping that they can have their pay reinstated, whatever back pay is due. And we're hoping that whatever blacklist they're on, because I know Steve Friend, again, just got rejected from a police chief position that he just recently applied for and was interviewing for. They are on a blacklist. They can't find jobs anywhere else. I mean, Steve Friend even applied for a gas station and he wasn't even approved for one of those jobs either. So there's definitely a blacklist, unfortunately.
And this is a guy that's been described as, to me, as, the quintessential, like, old school Boy Scout FBI agent. I mean, it's just, it is absurd. So your main thing is, look, they all need jobs, or at least you got to pay them. And what's preventing that?
Unfortunately, I've been told, based on my sources, that Director Patel did step in and he did stop it, which is really disappointing because Patel, Garret O'Boyle, Steve Friend, they've all been friends prior to being sworn in. They were very close. They had group messages going back and forth between all of them, and they really were excited for Patel getting in, getting confirmed. I know I was as well. I endorsed him on social media. I was pushing for him daily. And so it's really unfortunate to hear that that's what's happening. Now, we don't know exactly why that all of a sudden changed. I know when I had Ed Martin on my show, I did reach out to people within Patel's office and other offices and thank them for bringing him back. I know I spoke to someone who works for a senator who was also heavily involved in all of this. So everyone was on the same page until that statement came out on my show. So it's unfortunate that this has had to happen. I really want it to be resolved because both of these guys have families to feed, and you can't feed a family with something like this going on.
Yeah, we played that clip on our show. I'm so thankful that you are out there and leading the way on this, because justice does need to come through for these people, because they went through and they told you, hey, things aren't right behind the scenes. They should not be punished under a Trump administration, under a Kash Patel-led FBI. This is wrong, and these people need to be made whole. Breanna, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.